Hi, Phyllis here from southernfrugal.com. This morning I'm going to make some hot dog buns, homemade hot dog buns. Now I know hot dog buns are really cheap in the store and they're okay, but they've got preservatives and I can taste those preservatives in the hot dog bun. So I'm going to make my own. Now we don't have hot dogs very often and we're really not going to have hot dogs today. What we're going to have is some smoked sausage, the kind that you get at the fair, the state fair, with the peppers and the onions. So I'm going to do a video on that one too. But anyway, I want the really good buns to go with it. So, all right, here we go. We're going to get started. All right, the first thing you need is a pack of the Fleshman's yeast. Now you could use the rapid rise, but you don't really have to. Now I buy my yeast in bulk, so you know this is probably would be equivalent to maybe a pack and a half, but one pack will work. All right, to this we're going to add 1 tablespoon of just regular sugar. And you're going to need 1½ cups of water. Now this water is warm at about 100 to 110 degrees, and it's filtered water, so it doesn't have any chlorine in it. So if you don't have a way to filter your water, what you want to do is just set the cup out overnight and let the chlorine evaporate, because the yeast don't like the chlorine at all, okay? So I'm going to use 1/2 cup of this water. Now with my ice maker, I know when I'm making a video it's either the dogs or the ice maker, okay? Alright, so I'm going to just dissolve this yeast in this water with the sugar, and I'm just going to let it sit here for, I don't know, about 10 minutes. And you know, the yeast that's alive and thriving will start foaming up, because that yeast is going to already start to reproduce in this sugar water. So you want to just stir it around and get it dissolved. And it really doesn't have to be dissolved completely. Get it out of my spoon here. We'll be back in about 10 minutes. Okay, we're back 10 minutes later. See the little foam that's on the yeast? That means that it's alive. Now, I used to think yeast was a little animal, but it's actually a little plant. And I do buy mine in bulk from King Arthur, and I freeze them. I want to show you that. Comes in a vacuum pack. And I just put mine in a cleaned out peanut butter jar and keep it in the freezer. Now they do recommend that you keep the yeast in the freezer. So I've had this since about January, and I've probably used, I don't know, 1/4, maybe 1/3 of it. Alright, but you can get the packs in the grocery store just fine, but it's really a lot more economical if you order them from King Arthur Flour. And you can find that they've got a website where you can order it online. Alright, so we've got our yeast in here, a tablespoon of regular white sugar, and 1/2 cup of water, and we've waited 10 minutes till the yeast, we see it foaming. That way we know the yeast is alive and active. Now to this, we're going to add 1 more cup of water, and I'm just going to go ahead and put the powdered milk in there. That's 1/3 of a cup of powdered milk. Now, it's better to use powdered milk rather than whole milk, because if you use whole milk, you're going to have to scald it, and that's to kill the enzymes in it so they don't kill the yeast. So it's a lot better to just go ahead and use the non-fat dry milk. So I'm going to put that in. Then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of melted butter. Now, I went ahead and melted my butter and let it cool. So I'm going to put that in. And we're going to add a heaping teaspoon of just regular table salt. just kind of mix that in. And that's really all you need to do. The next step is adding the flour. So when I use the King Arthur, just because I think it's absolutely the best for any kind of bread you're making with yeast. So now this flour, you don't want to sift it. The measurements are for unsifted flour, so you want to just take it right out of the pack and dump it in. We're going to use 3 cups to start with. Now we might need more, and if we do, we're going to add that later. But right now, we're going to start out with 3 cups. I'm just going to use a regular fork to sort of mix that in. Now, what will determine the amount of flour is the amount of liquid that you have. So sometimes, you know, it might take a lot more than 3 cups, and sometimes it might not take quite 3 cups. Now this looks about right, and it all depends on the flour. Now, when I say it depends on the flour, it also could be different from one batch of flour to the next with the same brand. I think it has to do with, you know, how much water the wheat got when it was growing and that kind of thing. All right. Now, with your hands really clean, you're ready to start kneading it. Now, the reason you knead it is because you want to develop the gluten in the flour. I'm going to put a little more in because mine's a little sticky. So we're probably, you know, talking several tablespoons more right on top of it. And I'm just scraping down the sides kind of with my fingers. Now, the kneading, again, you're developing the gluten in the flour. And the gluten is what gives it, the flour, the stretchability. And you develop that gluten by mixing it a lot or kneading it. And I'll just show you how I knead it. I just grab a little bit from the bottom and push it over and then push it down with my fingers. Now I'm going to need a little more flour. Sprinkle it on there. And you'll know how much flour you need because you really don't want it sticking to your hands or anything. And the more you knead it, it's going to become more like a little rubber ball, really. It's even going to kind of look like a little rubber ball. So you're just pulling it over, mashing it down with your knuckles. Pull it over, mash it down. Now, this is going to give you a workout because you need to knead it 8 to 10 minutes usually. A little more flour. Get the flour on the bottom. So each time I pull it up, it's adding a little bit more flour in there. I usually just, you know, use my fingers and go around the bowl and get all those little squigglies off and let them go get incorporated into the ball of dough. Now once you get the hang of kneading, once the flour's ready, you'll know it because it will start feeling different. And see, this is already feeling different. And again, this is what's going to make the little gas bubbles, really is what they are, because the yeast starts reproducing, and as it's doing that, it's going to form a gas, and that's going to cause the gluten to stretch and form little bubbles right in your bread. A little more flour. Alright, so I would say I've been kneading it a couple of minutes now. So I'm going to knead it probably 5 or 6 more minutes and we'll be back. Okay, we're back and I've completed kneading my little dough ball. I'm going to show you what it looks like. See how smooth it looks? And it only sticks to your hands just a teeny bit. See? Alright, now what we're going to do is get a clean bowl, and I'm going to put about a tablespoon of just vegetable oil in the bowl. So I've got that down in the bottom of my bowl. Now I'm going to take my dough, watch this, put it in the little oil, tablespoon of oil, roll it all around, and so what you're doing is greasing the top of it when you do that. Alright, now we are ready to let this dough rise. So I'm going to take some saran wrap, and put it right over the top of it. Now, to facilitate the more even rising of the dough, you really need to have it in a warm place and with no drafts or anything. And so here's what I do. I put it on my little heating pad. Now start my heating pad out on high, turn it down to low. Now I've got a little metal trivet there which is pretty warm. Sit that on there, put a pot holder on top of it, sit the dough on top of that, and I find that that gives me more of the correct temperature. Now, yeast like to reproduce in the dark, so I'm give them a little bit of dark by just putting a towel over them. Now you'll need to let that rise for about an hour, and you know, sometimes it doesn't take that long, but I will show you how to know if it's ready when we get back. Okay, we are back, and I think our dough is probably risen enough. It's pretty well doubled in bulk. Now, to know if it's ready for sure, what you do is just poke your fingers in there. If the indent stays, then you know it's ready. Because if it's not ready, it'll start puffing back out immediately. Alright, so we're going to kind of punch that down a little bit. And I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of flour on a little, this is actually a little pie crust sheet to roll out pie crust. I'm going to get my dough out, just turn it down. Sprinkle a little more flour on it. And you really don't need a rolling pin. You can kind of do this with your hands. Now, I'm going to try to make 12 little hot dog rolls. Now, because I'm going to use these for the smoked sausage rather than for actual hot dogs, I'm going to cut it in such a way that the bun will be shorter. But if you're making them for hot dogs, you'd want to make yours a little longer. Again, I'm going to just use my scissors, and I'm going to start cutting. Actually, maybe I'll use a knife. Might go a little faster. No, that doesn't go faster. Go back to my scissors. Just cutting out strips. Yeah, some of these might be a little bigger than others, but that's okay. See, I've got it in 4 strips. Now, if you were just making regular hot dog rolls, you'd probably want to just cut it in half. But because I'm going to make the shorter one, I'm going to cut it in thirds. And some of these will be a little bigger than others, but that's okay. There's what they look like. Now I'm going to adjust the size of them a little bit more when I put them on the pan. Now I've greased my pan with some Crisco. And I'm just going to stretch them out just a little bit. Lay them right on the sheet. Stretch it out a little bit. Because I'm going to make these for smoked sausages, I want the bun a little bit fatter than you would normally make a hot dog bun. Alright, now I'm just going to flatten those out a little bit. Alright, now I've got 4 left that I'm going to put in another pan. And anyway, there they are. Now we're going to need to let them rise again. So I'm going to put them right back over here on my little hot pad area. I'm going to put some saran wrap over those, and then I'm going to put these other 4 in another pan and maybe put them over in the corner. And we'll let them rise again, this time for probably about 45 minutes, and we'll be back. Okay, the hot dog buns have risen, and they're ready to be cooked in the oven. And I made 12. Now I'm going to do the smoked sausage in mine. So if you're going to do hot dogs, you just make them a little smaller, maybe along that size right there. Anyway, so now we're going to bake these in the oven at 375 degrees for about 20 minutes, and you'd want to check them. So I'm going to bake these and we'll be back. Okay, our little buns are ready, and again I made these wider because we're going to have smoked sausage in the buns and put peppers and onions on them, and I'm going to do a video on that. Now all we're going to do is just brush them with some butter. Now, these buns can be frozen very easily. They thaw out in like 5 minutes after you take them out of the freezer, and you can just pop them in the oven and warm them up, or the microwave. Now, I would suggest if you're having hot dogs and hamburgers, you can make hot dog buns and hamburger buns out of these. And you can make them way ahead of when you need them. So that would be a great thing to have on July 4th if you're having hot dogs and hamburgers on the grill, to have homemade buns. Now, these are still hot, and I really want mine to be soft. And so the reason that I want them soft is because I just think they're easier to eat. So if you want yours soft, just cool them on the pan. And of course the butter is going to make the top of them soft. And all you have to do, and I would do this before I put them in the freezer, just use a serrated knife and saw almost all the way through it, and then just let it go back together and pack them in a bag or some kind of plastic container and put them in the freezer. Take them out 5 minutes before you need them, or 10 minutes, and they're ready to go. So there you go. Homemade hot dog buns, and that can be hamburger buns too if you want to make them in that shape. Alright, see you next time. Okay, here's the recipe for the homemade hot dog buns. And you could really actually double this recipe, and remember, you can freeze them. They freeze really well, and they kind of make a hot dog taste a whole lot better. Alright, see you next time.